Time now for an update on the day's business news. Well, as the US president urged India not to increase its use of Russian oil, European countries are stepping up their efforts to move away from Russian gas. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Yuka Royer from our business desk. Yuka, tell us all the latest.
Well, Sharon, we don't know if the war in Ukraine could be a catalyst for change in energy, but it has certainly prompted European nations to speed up their efforts to move towards renewables. Now, Spain has turned to wind power, which has now become its main source of electricity. Germany is exploring the benefits of installing floating solar plants. Catherine Viet has more.
Dotted throughout the landscape of Vilar de los Navarros in northeastern Spain, giant wind turbines. This site, developed by a Spanish-Italian firm, is one of the country's largest wind farms. Thanks to investment in the sector, there are more than 1,200 wind farms across the country, making Spain Europe's second biggest wind producer after Germany and the fifth largest in the world.
Spain is a country with tremendous potential as an energy store for the whole of Europe. The resource capacity we have in Spain in terms of wind and sun, the territory we have and the productive fabric we have at an industrial level could make Spain a major clean energy producer for Europe.
Last year, the sector became Spain's leading source of electricity, coming ahead of nuclear power and gas. By 2030, Madrid has set itself an ambitious goal to increase the share of renewables in electricity to 74%. And Spain isn't the only country looking for greener alternatives. In the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, Germany has been seeking ways to end its dependence on Russian oil and gas imports. One company is building a floating solar power plant at an abandoned quarry lake that will be able to provide 3 megawatts of electricity, the equivalent of a single offshore wind turbine.
We have taken a close look at the potential for floating solar plants in Germany, and I believe that this is just the start of a major shift into renewable energy on water surfaces.
The company says there are enough unused lakes for Germany to generate about 20 gigawatts of solar energy on water.
Sri Lanka has defaulted on its external debt worth $51 billion. The South Asian country is in the grips of its worst economic crisis in decades as its foreign currency reserves dry up, making it difficult to pay for imports of fuel and other essentials. It now has less than $2 billion in foreign reserves and was facing $4 billion of payments this year. The announcement from the Finance Ministry came after the central bank suspended payments of foreign debt to focus instead on restructuring debt to ease the impact. The government is due to start talks with the International Monetary Fund on a loan programme next week. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. And European markets fell at the open, tracking Wall Street and Asia. All sectors were in the red at the start of trading this Tuesday. Shares in Tokyo dropped to near one-month lows as concern mounts on inflation and a weakening yen. Chinese shares were lifted somewhat as Shanghai eased some coronavirus restrictions. All eyes are on key inflation data coming out of the United States later this Tuesday. This after inflation rose 7.9% over the 12 months to February, the sharpest rise in 40 years. Earlier in our programme, we asked market analyst Han Tan about what investors are focusing on.
Investors have plenty to contend with, but I think front and center is the Fed's plans to tighten policy. We know they have already raised interest rates with more to come, and also their plans to wind down their balance sheet, right? And whether or not these policy tightening can actually quell the red-hot inflation without breaking the U.S. economy, or if we'll see a stagflation environment. And of course, the still raging war in the Ukraine is fueling those inflationary pressures, and also, overall, still quite a bit to digest for market participants.
Following the surprise announcement that Tesla mogul Elon Musk would not join the board of Twitter, there's a lot of speculation as to what he intends to do next. The world's richest man last week disclosed he had bought about 9% of Twitter's shares, prompting the social media company to offer him a seat on its board. But he declined that offer as he posted a series of tweets suggesting significant changes to Twitter's business. Becoming a board member would also have prevented him from owning more than 14.9% of the company. Some analysts say he could now become a wildcat for Twitter.
We ultimately believe this turns from a Cinderella story, which would have been if Musk was on the board, to more of a Game of Thrones. I think Musk potentially could go hostile here, continue to increase his stake, maybe partner with the likes of private equity or others. And this could lead to, what could be the ultimate acquisition of Twitter or some forced strategic changes, including the board. I think it just came down to Musk was not going to play nice in the sandbox with the Twitter board. And that's ultimately what we got last night.
From Cinderella to Game of Thrones, that's a rather brutal take on what is to come, I guess.
It's hard to keep track of his activities, isn't it, at this stage? Seems to be in the papers pretty much every day. Yuka Royer from our business desk, thanks so much for joining us. Well, it's time now for